What is going on, college basketball fans? Today we're going to be doing our full 2023 March Madness bracket predictions based on Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology, which came out yesterday, Tuesday, December 27th. This is what it's looking like, and Joe Lunardi is usually pretty accurate, so if the season ended today, this is probably what the bracket would look like, something very similar to this. So I've taken his most recent bracketology, put it into my own personal PDF, which I will fill out and predict every game all the way to the national championship based on what we know at this point in the season. Of course, a lot will change before we get to March Madness, but it's fun, and we do an updated version of these every once in a while. And then when we get to March Madness, we do a lot more of these videos, but a ton of college basketball content on the channel. Make sure you guys check it out and consider subscribing. Like I said, if you're a college basketball fan, you definitely want to subscribe. And yeah, guys, let's get it started. So our first region, we got Purdue as our top overall seed, and they are going to be facing Wagner. I got to go with Purdue. Zach Edey and them boys, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith especially. Those two freshman guards have been huge, and I'm very excited to watch them specifically play in Big Ten play. They're going to pick up some losses. They're undefeated up to this point in the season. They will pick up some losses, but even so, I still think Purdue definitely will get past Wagner, and we'll see how the rest of their team around Zach Edey there performs throughout the season. Right now, definitely advancing to the second round. Next up, we got New Mexico, the undefeated Lobos as an 8 seed here, going up against Missouri as a 9 seed. Missouri just picked up a big win over Illinois last week, and New Mexico, like I said, is undefeated. And I think I'm going to rock with the Lobos actually to win this one. I don't know what's going on with Illinois, but I struggle with giving too much credit to Missouri for that one. I know their only loss is to Kansas, but they lost by 30 points. And I don't know if I can trust Missouri yet. They're another team I got to see when they get into SEC play how they are going up against teams like Alabama, like Arkansas, like Tennessee. It's really going to show me what this Missouri team is about. New Mexico, I'm going to trust the Lobos here to get to the second round in this one. Next up, we got Xavier as a 5 seed and Iona as the 12 seed. Rick Pitino versus Sean Miller. That's going to be a really good coaching battle, but I'm actually going to have Xavier win this one. I think they have a really solid team, and I know Iona, they got a couple good wins there over some A10 teams, but the A10 really hasn't been all that great this year, and Iona does have quite a bit of losses there that they picked up early in the season. We'll see if they can continue to do well. I do think that they will win their conference. If they can win their conference tournament, they'll be here in the NCAA tournament, but a bad draw here by getting Xavier here. I think Jack Nunge would have a big game in this one over Iona. I also really like Soli Boom. Soli Boom, one of the most underrated players in college basketball. Give me the Musketeers to advance to round 2. Next up, we got West Virginia versus 13-seeded Yale, coming out of the Ivy League there, and I'm going to rock with my boys. I am a WVU fan. I got to rock with West Virginia to defeat Yale. I don't know too much about Yale, but definitely not one of the top mid-majors that are on my radar, so I think WVU would advance here to the next round. Also, WVU as a 4 seed over Xavier in the same region is very interesting, considering Xavier did beat WVU this year, so that's a little bit weird, but we'll roll with it because Joe Lunardi, like I said, is usually pretty accurate. All right, next up, we got 6-seeded Ohio State versus 11-seeded Charleston. And I promise you guys, if you're going to watch my bracket predictions, you are not going to see chalk. I picked the upsets because they happen in real life, and this is one that is a clear upset for me. I'm definitely going to rock with Charleston here to win this one and defeat Ohio State. I just don't trust Ohio State too much. I do think that, they have the athletes, so they usually beat up on teams that are worse than them, and they usually lose to teams that are better than them. They're just one of those teams. But I do think they could get upset here. Yeah, they do have the advantage athletically, but I think Charleston, they won it this year. They've looked really good. They got a win over Virginia Tech this year, who's looked really good. And I would say Virginia Tech is better than Ohio State at this point. So Charleston could definitely get this done. It would be a 50-50 game, honestly, for me, but I'm going to rock with Charleston here to pick up the upset. Next up, we got Arkansas versus Southern Miss. And Arkansas, they had a tough go about so far in the season. They lost Brazil to an injury. They lost Nick Smith Jr. to an injury for the rest of the season. But I still think Anthony Black, Ricky Council IV, those guys are going to be able to get past Southern Miss here and advance to the next round. Eric Musselman, one of the best coaches in college basketball, in my opinion. He's been to the Elite Eight two or three times now with Arkansas already. Insane start what he's done with this program, definitely getting to the second round here over Southern Miss. Next up, we got a very interesting matchup here between Mississippi State and Oklahoma, 7 versus 10. I could go either way on this one. Two pretty good coaches, honestly. Porter Moser there at Oklahoma, and also Chris Jans at Mississippi State. And I like this Mississippi State team. They just picked up their first loss of the season last week to Drake, but their defense is looking really good, and maybe that loss is kind of what they needed. They're another team like Missouri. I need to see them play more of the top teams in the SEC and see how they go up against them. But I do really like this Mississippi State team. Oklahoma, they're a team that's been up and down, and I could definitely see them losing to a team like Mississippi State, a defensive team that's going to hold them. I'm going to go with Mississippi State here to win this one. I think they've been more consistent over the course of the season, and Oklahoma, I think it would be a super close game, though. It would be definitely a classic, down to the wire. Next up, we got UCLA versus Montana State. Give me UCLA. They've been really hot lately, all the way up to a 2 seed now. They've been killing it. Give me the Bruins here in this one. Now let's go over to the top right region where we have UConn as our next 1 seed, and they're going up against Colgate here in the first round, going up against the Toothpaste. They got a win in the tournament last year against Wisconsin in a big upset, but I'm going to go with UConn here to win first round. They have looked like, in my opinion, the best team in the country up to this point in the season. They have the deepest bench in the country. Don't forget about Sonogo. He's an absolute star. Andre Jackson, Tristan Newton, you name it. They have studs on this team. I'm definitely taking UConn here to advance to the next round over the Toothpaste. Next up, we got TCU versus San Diego State. This would be a very scrappy game, but I just don't trust San Diego State too much in March. They're one of those teams, they just don't usually perform too well in March. And I'm going to trust TCU. Jamie Dixon and the squad have been looking pretty good ever since they got their team back fully healthy. They're a team that I'm looking out for to take off and get a lot of really good wins getting into conference play here in the Big 12. Next up, we got Indiana versus Sam Houston. Now this 12/5, I don't really see happen. I know Sam Houston got off to a pretty hot start so far this season, but I just don't think they're really all that great. I think they got a win over Oklahoma, or Oklahoma State was probably their best win, but I just don't trust Sam Houston. I would definitely see Iona beating Xavier before this 12/5. So I'm going to go with Indiana in this one. I think TJD, Xavier Johnson, them boys, they're going to pick up a win here in March and get to the second round. Next up, we got Virginia versus Dayton, and I really hate that they have Dayton still in these bracketologies. I don't think that they are winning the A10 and getting in as a 13 seed. The fact that they have them over Fordham, a Fordham team who is 12-1 and their only loss is to Arkansas, is beyond me, because if this was Fordham, I definitely think about maybe picking an upset here, but against Dayton, no shot. I don't even think they deserve to be here. I think they would have to win their conference tournament in the A10 to get in, or have a really good rest of the season, like kind of win out almost against a weak A10. So I'm going to take Virginia for sure over Dayton, because Dayton preseason we thought were going to be really good, but since the season started, they just haven't been it, man. Next up, we got Maryland versus Kent State. And Kent State, they actually quietly got off to a pretty good start. But I'm going to trust Maryland here in round one. I don't think I trust Maryland in the long haul of this tournament, but in round one, in round two, depending on the matchup, I could definitely see them picking up some wins. But I think they are a team that kind of, they run out of gas, and they showed at home against UCLA. They looked tired, man, and UCLA was running all over them up and down the court and just blew them out. So I'm going to trust Maryland here in round one against Kent State. I just don't think the MAC conference is all that good. So give me Maryland in this one. Next up, we got Baylor versus UMass Lowell, and I'm going to go with Baylor here in this one. I just don't know too much about UMass Lowell. I don't think they're beating Baylor. I mean, that guard trio that they have there of LJ Cryer, Adam Flagler, Keontae George. I mean, 2 veteran guards and then a stud freshman in George. They also got Flo Thamba that they're going to have to worry about there for the Bears. Give me Baylor in round one. Next up, we got Virginia Tech versus Creighton, and that is a really fun matchup in the 7 versus 10 because Virginia Tech has been pretty surprising how good of a start they've got off to so far this season. They got a big win over North Carolina this year, but they did just recently lose to Boston College, and that kind of worries me a little bit. And Creighton's kind of turning back up a little bit. They got back-to-back wins after their big slump. Some sicknesses were involved there. I think Creighton's going to be a lot better, and I think they're going to be able to pick up a win here in round one against Virginia Tech. So give me the Blue Jays in that one. Next up, we got Tennessee versus Furman in the 2 versus 15 game. Give me Tennessee here to win this one. So now let's move into our third region in the bottom left. We got Arizona as our 1 seed here in this region. I would probably have Houston as my other 1 seed over Arizona, but either way, I do think they both are very close to deserving it, and I am going to have Arizona defeat Norfolk State easily in that one. Next up, we got Marquette versus Kansas State. I think that would be a really fun matchup. Kansas State quietly off to a pretty good start. I think they were projected to be probably the worst team in the Big 12, but they've gotten some good finds here in the transfer portal, and I think that Kansas State probably would give Marquette a run for their money, and it would probably be a close game, and Marquette's shown that they can lose to some not-so-great teams. Give me Kansas State. I mean, Kansas is way better than a not-so-great team, but I'm just saying Marquette loses games, and you just don't know which Marquette team you're going to get, because are you going to get the team where they beat Baylor by 30 points or the team, where they're losing to Mississippi State, to losing to Providence? I think that, if you get that team, Kansas State could definitely win. They've gotten to a hot start so far this year. Give me K-State in this one. Next up, we got our 5-seeded Kentucky. Who would have thought 5-seeded Kentucky? I think that they should probably even be lower at this point, like around a 7 seed. So Kentucky versus a 12-seeded Texas Tech or Iowa. Now, Texas Tech, Iowa in the play-in game, first 4 game. Give me Texas Tech to defeat Iowa, so we'll go ahead and erase them out. I just don't trust Iowa at this point in the season. They just don't have any really big wins. I think Texas Tech would beat them. Also, Fardas IMAC coming back very soon for Texas Tech. So this is an upset I could definitely see, and I think I'm going to rock with it. I'm going to rock with Texas Tech. My first 12 over 5 here in this one, defeating Kentucky. I just don't really trust Kentucky at this point in the season. They've shown they can't really win that many big games. I think Texas Tech is going to go through a gauntlet in the Big 12. They're going to get Fardas IMAC back. They're well coached with Coach Mark Adams there. Give me the Red Raiders to defeat Kentucky in round 1, 12 over a 5. Next up, we got North Carolina versus 13-seeded Bradley. I'm going to take North Carolina to win this one. I mean, way too talented to be losing to Bradley round 1. Of course, we've seen talented teams lose in round 1 before. I just don't know too much about Bradley to really pick them here at this point in the season. Next up, we got 6-seeded Auburn going up against 11-seeded either Utah State or Rutgers. And I'm going to go with Rutgers to defeat Utah State here in the play-in game. I think Rutgers is kind of on an upwards trajectory, whereas Utah State, they just had 2 back-to-back bad losses to sub 500 teams after being undefeated before that, so they're kind of going downhill at this point. Give me Rutgers to defeat them in that game, and then give me Rutgers to defeat Auburn 11/6, another upset in this region. I think Rutgers is really good there with Caleb McConnell. He's maybe the best wing defender in the country, or one of definitely top 3, undebatable in my personal opinion. Also, Amorie down low for Rutgers. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's one of the most underrated bigs, and I think that he could really handle, and they could play some good defense on Johnny Broome there and those Auburn guards. Give me Rutgers to pick up a big upset over the Bruce Pearl Tomatoes here in round 1. Next up, we got Texas versus UC Santa Barbara, and I think even without Chris Beard, who knows if he'll be back by March, but we're doing as of right now. So right now they don't have Chris Beard. It is Coach Rodney Terry, and I think even under Coach Rodney Terry, Texas has too much talent to be losing to UC Santa Barbara here in this one. I'm going to take Texas here to move on to round number 2. Next up, we got the Fighting Illini of Illinois going up against Arizona State. Now, Arizona State just got a 30-point loss last week to San Francisco. Kind of worrying. But then Illinois, they just lost big to Missouri. They've lost big to Penn State this year. You just don't know which teams you're going to get between these 2 squads. And it's very worrying. It's very worrying. I do think if I had to trust one of these teams to come out of here, I would trust Illinois. I think that I trust them a lot more to turn things around and become more consistent by the end of the season. And I do think they definitely have the best player on the court in Terrence Shannon Jr. So give me the Fighting Illini here to win this one. Then we got Houston versus Longwood, and give me Houston. Too talented offensively and defensively. Easily one of the best teams in the country. Give me the Cougars to win round 1. And in our last region, our final 1 seed, we do have the Kansas Jayhawks, the defending national champions, coming back as a 1 seed here in this one. And I'm going to take them over Grambling State here in this one. So no 16s over 1s this year. Kansas advances to round 2. Next up, we got Iowa State versus St. Mary's in the 8-9. This will be a really fun matchup because Iowa State, they're another team. I have some question marks about them. They're up and down, man. They're up and down. I don't really trust Holmes there for Iowa State too much to carry this team. And against a team like St. Mary's, especially a team that really controls the pace, they make you play their game. They use the entire shot clock. They don't turn the ball over, and they take efficient shots, and they're going to wear you down and play that game. And I think against Iowa State, that's a good draw for St. Mary's, and I'm going to have them be able to control the pace and defeat Iowa State here in round 1. St. Mary's moves on to the next round. Then we got Wisconsin versus Florida Atlantic, and FAU is quietly, starting to get some stuff going there down there in Florida. So this is a 12-5. I would definitely consider taking. I think Wisconsin is definitely a team that could be prone to some upsets. I think Tyler Wall there is one of the, he's an underrated player. I don't know if I trust him to make a run there with Wisconsin. I'm going to go with Florida Atlantic. This is my second 12/5 pick. Wisconsin losing in round 1 to FAU. I should have just put FAU. I'm typing now Atlantic, but that's all right. Florida Atlantic University moving on here to round 2. I mean, they've been quietly, I need to watch more FAU, but they've quietly got off to a really hot start down there, and definitely need to catch me a few more games. So, Duke versus Oral Roberts. We got our 4 versus 13 in this region. This would be an interesting game. Max Bemis, we all know they went on that Sweet 16 run a couple of years ago as a 15 seed. So as a 13 seed, are they going to be able to upset Duke in Jon Scheyer's first year there at head coach? And I definitely think that it's possible. Duke has not shown to be anything super crazy, and I'm yet to pick. The biggest upset I have so far is a 12 over a 5, and I'm kind of feeling this. I'm going to pick Oral Roberts here in this one to defeat Duke here in round 1. I think we're going to get at least one 13 over a 4. I mean, the last few years we've had a 15 over a 2. I think we're bound to at least get a 13 over 4, maybe a 14 over a 3. I could definitely see that happening. At this point, I'm not going to take a 14 over a 3. Spoiler, I'm taking Gonzaga over Liberty. But I am going to take Oral Roberts over Duke in this one. I think we're just bound. It's bound to happen. A 13 is beating a 4 at least this season. We're not just going to get 12 over 5s. We're going to get something a little bit better this year. I mean, the upsets are going to be very, very good this year. I can feel it. So next up, we got Memphis versus Penn State. This one, also another pretty interesting matchup. I trust Kendrick Davis. He's a guy that I could definitely see helping his team make a run. I mean, he really is kind of that whole Memphis offense there. Like, he is an amazing playmaker, an amazing scorer, shooter, driver, everything, man. Give me Memphis. Kendrick Davis, an absolute stud. I mean, I do like Penn State. They do have some veteran guards there. They got some wins over like Illinois. They're definitely way better than I thought they would, and I could definitely see them as a tournament team. But give me Memphis to defeat them in this one. Next up, we got Gonzaga versus Liberty. Like I said before, I'm going to go with the Zags. Yes, I am wearing a Gonzaga shirt. No, I am not a Gonzaga fan. I just have a lot of different teams' shirts because, well, I love college basketball. So next up, we got Miami versus Michigan State. Miami's looked really good. I like this draw. I mean, this one I'm not going to even spend too much time on. Tom Izzo in March is tough, man. He's tough. But Miami, they just got a big win over Virginia. Although Virginia almost came back there at the very end and beat them, I think I'm going to trust Miami at this point to defeat Michigan State. I know Malik Hall is coming back there for Michigan State. Joey Hauser, I definitely believe, is a guy who could help this team get a win or two in March for Michigan State. But Miami's looked really good, and I think it would be criminal to not pick them in this one because I think that it's criminal. They are only a 7 seed in the bracketology at this point. I think that they should be at least a 5. I mean, they just beat Virginia. They only have one loss to Maryland this year. I definitely think Miami should be definitely a higher seed. So I think it's criminal not to at least have them win one game here, especially with the way Isaiah Wong has been playing lately. Dude has been killing it. He is a bucket. Next up, we got Alabama versus SIU Edwardsville, and I'm going to rock with Bama here to advance to round 2. Brandon Miller, best freshman in the country. No debate. Best freshman in the country. He's been killing it. Round of 32. Here we go. Battle of 2 undefeated teams. There's only 3 undefeated teams in college basketball, and 2 of them are head-to-head here in round 32, and that is Purdue versus the New Mexico Lobos, and I am going to go with Purdue to win this one. I don't think New Mexico has anyone that's going to be able to stop Zach Edey, and as long as the shooting around Zach Edey there for Purdue is at least pretty decent, they're going to be just fine, man. They're going to be just fine. Boilermakers freight training their way to the Sweet 16. Next up, we got Xavier versus WVU here in a rematch, and this is interesting. I am a West Virginia fan, maybe a little bit biased, but I am going to go with West Virginia here to win this one and advance to the Sweet 16, and here's why. WVU is a very deep team, one of the deepest teams in the country. They play 10-man deep, and they had Xavier in that game on the road, tough environment. This is different. This is in a neutral site game. I think West Virginia can close this one out. If they had another shot at the Musketeers, I believe they would. Eric Stevenson, Joe Toussaint, Keedy Johnson, all these guys are really good guards who can score the rock on any given night. They take turns each night. Who's going to do it? And they can all defend. That's the key word, defend the rock. I mean, this is a Bob Huggins team. Let them ride here to the Sweet 16. That sets up another rematch between Purdue and West Virginia in that one. Next up, we got Charleston versus Arkansas. Can Charleston keep up the ride and advance to the Sweet 16 over Arkansas? And this one's tough because I do think Arkansas, definitely still the more talented team here, even without Nick Smith and also Brazil. But I am feeling Charleston in this one. I think that, they have that type of team. They can make a little bit of a run. They won their preseason tournament. They beat Virginia Tech early on in the season. Let's rock with Charleston here to the Sweet 16. I'm sorry, Arkansas, but every team gets upset every once in a while, and Arkansas has been making some runs lately, and I do think Arkansas as a program is definitely on an upwards trajectory, and I do think that they could definitely they'll definitely make a Final Four at least, or even win a championship here within the next 5 years, 100%. I don't think it's this year. I think Anthony Black, Ricky Council still could easily carry them to the Sweet 16 or even the Elite 8, but I'm going to rock with Charleston here to pick up a big, massive upset. I'm sorry, Arkansas fans, but give me Charleston to advance in this one. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus UCLA. Now, this one is a good matchup. I mean, UCLA, they have some veterans on this team. Jamie Yaquez, Tiger Campbell. These guys are veteran guys. Jaden Clark has been a surprise this season. He's been really good. And then also you have the freshman Amari Bailey, who's really starting to come into his own as of late. And I think that is too much for Mississippi State here in this one. So I'm going to take UCLA here to advance to the next round. So now let's go to our top right region. We got UConn versus TCU, and I think this is no easy task for the UConn Huskies in this one. TCU is going to come out of this one. They have a really good starting five, but I think UConn is going to outlast them in the end, pull away in the end, or maybe it's close all the way throughout, but either way, I think UConn, they find a way to get it done here in the end and defeat a really talented TCU team who is going to be a higher seed than an 8 seed. So they won't have to go up against the UConn in the second round more than likely, because I believe they will be a higher seed by the time we get to March Madness. But I think this would be a really close game. I mean, this is a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type of game in the round of 32, in my opinion. So UConn advancing to the Sweet 16 in this one. Next up, we got Indiana versus Virginia, and this would be a lot of fun. I think Virginia, top to bottom, probably have the matchup advantage 4 versus 5 seed here in this one. And it almost reminds me of like Illinois versus Houston last year, where Virginia would be the Houston in this situation. I mean, they're very scrappy, a very good defensive team. And I know they just lost to Miami. They just fight, man. They don't give up. And I'm going to take Virginia here to beat Indiana and advance here to the Sweet 16. And that sets up an amazing matchup between UConn and Virginia. I need to see that game. But Indiana falling short here in this one in the second round. Next up, we got Maryland versus Baylor. Very, very good game here in this one. Maryland would not back down in this one, that's for sure. Maryland has a solid team. I could see this one going down to the wire, but Baylor lost in the second round last year to North Carolina. I don't think Baylor's losing that early again this year. They have a really solid team. I think they're at least making a Sweet 16 push. Give me Baylor to get past Maryland here in this one and advance. Next up, we got 10-seeded Creighton going up against 2-seeded Tennessee. And Tennessee, under head coach Rick Barnes, they've been a really solid team, but they never really seem to get it done here in March Madness. And Creighton is a team that I could see, getting a little bit momentum under their belts with this really good starting five. I mean, they have one of the best starting fives in the country. It's between them and North Carolina for me. I mean, they have an insane starting five with a lot of star power. And I'm going to take Creighton. I'm going to take Creighton to defeat Tennessee. I do think that, that's an upset, 10-2 there in the second round. I do think that Tennessee, they play really good defense on opposing teams' big men, and Ryan Cockburner is such a huge piece to this Creighton team, so I could definitely see a situation where Tennessee just plays really good defense and is able to defeat the Blue Jays, but I think Creighton can definitely outscore them. I mean, any one of their starting fives guys can take over a game. Give me Creighton to advance here in this one. Now, let's go ahead to our third region in the bottom left. We got Arizona versus Kansas State in round 2. And like I said, Kansas State has been a surprise this season. I think they can give Arizona a little bit of a run for their money, but I think Arizona easily will end up pulling away and defeating Kansas State and moving on. Next up, we got Texas Tech versus North Carolina. And like I said, North Carolina has one of the best starting fives in the country as well. And I am going to take North Carolina in this one. Fardaws Aimaq versus Armando Bacot would be a treat to watch for sure. But I think the guard play all around, North Carolina definitely has the advantage. And I think once they get to March Madness, even in the regular season as of late, they've been turning up. But I think once they get to March Madness, they're really about to turn up, and I think they can beat Texas Tech here in a close one in round 2. Next up, we got Rutgers. We got the Texas Longhorns. Can Rutgers advance and pull off a big-time upset over the Texas Longhorns in this one? And honestly, I'm kind of feeling it. Like, Rutgers is definitely better than what their record is. They've been really heating up lately. I'm a big fan of what I've seen from this Rutgers team the last few games. And I'm going to take Rutgers to defeat Texas in this one. I mean, I've been saying for, ever since the second or third week into the season this year, Timmy Allen needs more touches for Texas to reach their max potential this season. Timmy Allen still has not gotten the touches he deserves on this Texas team. I think Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter are amazing guards, one of the best backcourts in the country, but when you have guys like Caleb McConnell, who is going to be a defensive force in this game, I'm going to take Rutgers to defeat them. I just don't think Texas is ever going to figure out that Timmy Allen needs to emerge as that third star and be a go-to scorer for them to be great. Give me Rutgers to win in advance. I think that's our third double-digit seed here in the Sweet 16. We have Rutgers, Charleston, and Creighton all heading to the Sweet 16, so you'd love to see it. All right, next up, we got Illinois as our 7th seed versus Houston as our 2 seed. Illinois has shown, they defeated Texas in double overtime, and that was a game where Terrence Shannon Jr. didn't really show up until overtime, and then he showed us that he could be an elite closer in that game. I do think Illinois has a ton of potential to make a Sweet 16 Elite 8, maybe even a Final Four run. Like, they have a super good team, but I don't really trust Big Ten teams. I haven't really trusted Illinois, and I think going up against a team in Houston in the second round, I don't think I can trust them. I mean, Kelvin Sampson has been so good in March. Houston has some experience. I mean, they made it to the Elite 8 last year without Marcus Sasser, and now they got him back. They have a really good freshman, one of the best freshmen in the country, in Jarris Wallace at center. I just can't trust Illinois to figure it out enough to beat Houston. Not at this point in the season. We'll see how they do throughout Big Ten play, but even then, I don't really trust Big Ten teams too much once we get to March, so I don't know if I can do it. Illinois just too inconsistent. If they can get it all together and show me something here with Matt Meyer, Terrence Shannon Jr., all these guys going, Coleman Hawkins, if they can get all these guys going and reach their max potential, I could see them pulling off an upset over Houston, but even then, I think it's a close game. And that's a rematch from the second round of last year as well, where Houston did win that one. So, our final region for the second round, we got Kansas versus St. Mary's. I think this would be a really cool test to see if St. Mary's could defeat this Kansas team here in the second round, because St. Mary's, they almost did beat Houston this year. They've shown that they can compete with some of these top teams. Last season, they defeated Gonzaga. It's just the way they play, and if you catch the right team at the right time, St. Mary's will make you pay for it. I mean, they play super good fundamental basketball. That's just their identity. They know who they are. They know how they're going to try to beat you. You know how they're going to try to beat you. Can you stop it and play your own game? I think Kansas does that, especially at this point in the season. They've shown they've been putting up 90 points a game, and St. Mary's is not a team they're not going to be able to put up 90 points a game. They need to hold their opponent to around 60 or under, maybe 65 at most. They need to hold their opponent to 65 or less probably in order to have a chance to win, and I definitely think that Kansas, more times than not, will win this game for sure. And next up, we're going to have another double-digit seed in the Sweet 16, because we have Florida Atlantic versus Oral Roberts for a chance to go to a Sweet 16. Now, I think 12 versus 13 seed, everyone's going to be like, oh, Oral Roberts, they're back, man. Let's go. But I think FAU is actually the team that I think might be the better team. So give me FAU, Florida Atlantic University, to defeat Oral Roberts and advance to the Sweet 16 here in this one. Let's get it. So next up, we got Memphis versus Gonzaga. Now, this would be a treat to watch. This definitely would be a treat. So Memphis with Kendrick Davis. Kendrick Davis, you could argue Drew Timme, but in my opinion, he would maybe be the best player on the court in this game. I mean, the way he is so valuable to his team. I mean, Drew Timme is as well, but he's got really good pieces around him. I don't know if I can pick Memphis. This is another rematch from last year's March Madness in the second round, where Gonzaga did defeat Memphis, but it was a super close game. And I know I'm rocking the Zaga shirt right now, but I'm going to rock with Memphis here to pull off a big-time upset, 6-3, and move on to the Sweet 16. I think Kendrick Davis is just that type of guy. He can make a little bit of a run. And let's rock with Memphis, man. Let's rock with Memphis to make it here to the Sweet 16. I really like Kendrick Davis's game, and I think that they're going to need. Gonzaga is a team that, against Alabama, they showed they can be an elite team when they get all forces going. But then again, they've also shown that they could lose. They let Xavier put up a bunch of points on them with Sully Boom, and I think Kendrick Davis could have a similar effect, maybe even a bigger effect. And they let Purdue beat them pretty bad. So they definitely have their cold spouts. I mean, Drew Timme has been playing out of his mind recently, so it's hard to pick an upset against him at this point. But I'm going to rock with Memphis. I already did it. I'm locking it in for now. So lock it in for this bracket prediction. So next up, we got Miami versus Alabama. This one is tough for me because Miami's been playing really good. Isaiah Wong has been a bucket. But even then, Brandon Miller, I think that he can match that. I think Brandon Miller can match that. And I think Bama's has the guards in Quinterly. Quinterly, I don't really like his game too much. I think he's been a little bit off. If he can get that together by the time we get to March, and then also Mark Sears, who I really like there for Alabama as well. the freshman center Noah Clowney. I think that him versus Norchad there would be a really fun matchup. I think Norchad might win that battle, but I'm gonna take Bama here to win this one. Give me Alabama. Brandon Miller, big game. They advance to the Sweet 16. So now let's go ahead and get to the next round. We'll go ahead and do our Elite Eight and Final Fours for each region now. So next up we got Purdue versus West Virginia. So another rematch. WVU lost by, I think, 12 points the first time around there in the Phil Knight tournament. Are they going to be able to defeat Purdue this time? I do think Jimmy Bell did a decent job against Zach Edey last time. They just fouled him way too much, and you can't foul Zach Edey. He's too efficient from the free throw line. And we did see this game at a neutral site court already, and I do think if Purdue has an off shooting night, West Virginia could definitely, capitalize on that and pull off an upset here and make it to the Elite Eight. And I don't think I can do that, though. I think Purdue, they already shown that they can defeat WVU. I think it would be even closer than the first time they went up against each other, because WVU has shown that they've improved on their shooting a lot more, and I think that they would drive the ball a lot more on this Purdue team next time and learn from them. But I still think I've got to go with Purdue in this one. But I do think it would be a super close game. I think it would be a lot closer than the first time around. Next up, we got Charleston versus UCLA. Now, can Charleston advance here to the Elite Eight? That would be really fun to see. But I think UCLA has been too hot lately. Give me the Bruins here to advance in this one. They've been too hot. I'm a big fan of Jaden Clark now. I feel like he does it all here for this UCLA team. And Jamie Yaquez as well. Tiger Campbell, whenever he gets to March Madness, he's good now, but in March Madness, he is a great facilitator, great leader for this team. Give me UCLA to move on. And let's go ahead and make our pick to make it to the Final Four in this region. So we got Purdue versus UCLA. Really good matchup at this point, and I do think UCLA has some guys, they can throw some doubles at Zach Edey, and I think this is a game where UCLA has the veteran guards compared to Purdue's freshman guards, right? And Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith going up against Tiger Campbell, Jaden Clark. Amari Bailey is a freshman, but still, I definitely think UCLA has the veterans here in this one. And Purdue's ride is going to end here in the Elite Eight. They make it one step further than they did last year after losing to St. Peter's, and UCLA advances to the Final Four. I actually believe this. When I say this, I think UCLA is a better team than they were last year when they had Johnny Juzang. And I fully believe that when I say that. I think this year's team is better. Give me UCLA to advance to the Final Four. They have looked really good as of late. Next up, we got UConn versus Virginia. And this is the matchup, man. This is the matchup where I would pay a lot of money to see this matchup. Let's just say that it would be a lot of fun, and two really good teams going at it, two really good defensive teams. I think the difference in this one is probably UConn's big men play. I think UConn's big man play between Sanogo and Donovan Clingan will be too much for this Virginia's team. I don't think they have the guys down low to be able to stop them. And I do think UConn, they need to be able to shoot the ball well, open up that inside scoring for their bigs. If they can do that, I think UConn will win this game, but it's going to be really close. It's going to go down to the wire. Virginia is a team they're not going to give up. Tony Bennett is an amazing coach, but I got to go with UConn in this one. It would be an amazing game, but give me UConn. UConn, probably the hardest run so far. Colgate, nothing there, but TCU, a team that I think is better than an 8 seed, and a Virginia team that I would say is probably better than a 4 seed. They're probably around a 4 seed, but still, even then, super good team. They have one of the best coaches in the country, Tony Bennett. It is no easy task there for UConn. Next up, we got Baylor versus Creighton. And this would be another super fun matchup, right? I mean, Baylor, they have a tough squad, and I do think that they have better depth than Creighton, because Creighton has almost no depth at all, so you can kind of say that against any game against the Blue Jays. But Creighton, top to bottom, do they have a better team? I think if Baylor Shireman is making some shots, Ryan Kalkbrenner versus Flo Thamba would be a lot of fun to watch. Both guys who can get a lot of block shots, both guys who are scoring around the rim. I think Ryan Kalkbrenner would probably win that matchup, but Baylor's guards, I mean, the defensive guard play in this game would be outstanding. Can Baylor's guards lock up Ryan Nembhard and Trey Alexander? That would probably be the difference. Can Baylor's guards stop them? And I'm going to go with no. I'm going to go with Creighton to defeat this one. I think it would be similar to that Baylor-North Carolina matchup in the second round last year, where it went all the way down to the wire. Both teams have over 80 points, like high 80s, 90 points. It would be an insane game, but Creighton ultimately comes out on top and wins this one, and say like 90 to 88, something like that, in a crazy classic game. Ton of fun. Give me Creighton to move on, and that sets up a Big East showdown to make it to the Final Four between UConn and Creighton. And we got Ryan Kalkbrenner versus Sanogo. We got the matchups in this game would be amazing, man, amazing. And these are two teams that have already played 2 times up to this once we get to March. So they haven't played yet in real life, but assuming we're in March Madness, these two teams have already played 2 times. It would be round 3 for the ages in order to make it to the Sweet 16. And I think I got to go with UConn. I think whenever you got a team with the best depth in the country, and then a team that is probably going to play their starting 5 almost the whole game, I got to go with the team that has the best depth in the country to make it to the Final Four. So I'm going to rock with UConn to make it here to the Final Four. So far we got UCLA and UConn in our Final Four. Next up, we got Arizona versus North Carolina, and these Sweet 16 matchups are amazing. I mean, I really hope the bracket does turn out this way, because we would be getting some classic games to watch here this March. So, Arizona versus North Carolina. Will I go with the upset here? I mean, 4/1, I could definitely see it happening. So far, both of our 1 seeds have made it to the Elite 8. Is this going to be our first 1 seed to kind of get knocked out here before the Elite 8? And I think I'm going to rock with that. I'm going to go with North Carolina here to defeat Arizona. And I do really like this Arizona team, but I think North Carolina is just one of those teams, and there's not many, but North Carolina is one of very few that matches up pretty good against Arizona. I mean, North Carolina, when you think Arizona, you think, okay, they have 2 super huge guys. They got their big men at center, and then they got Turbellis at power forward, who is 6'11", can shoot the rock. Well, North Carolina has Armando Bacot and Pete Nance, who can kind of take that away. And then I also think North Carolina has the edge of on guard play there. I think Caleb Love, RJ Davis, they turn up when you get to the tournament. And Courtney Ramey and also Krista, they're some good players, but I don't think they're Caleb Love and RJ Davis. And Leaky Black as well is a great defender. He's going to help out as well. They might put Leaky Black, honestly, on Turbellis, and I think that he could do a really good job. So I'm going to take the Tar Heels here to advance and make it to the Elite 8 here in this one. Then we got Rutgers versus Houston, and I think this is where I'm going to have Rutgers' run come to an end. I think, what Rutgers had going for them was their great defense there with McConnell and Amorie, but then you're heading up against a Houston team who has so many great defenders, so well coached there by Kelvin Sampson. I got Houston advancing here in this one. Next up, we got that sets up a very fun Elite Eight matchup between North Carolina and Houston, and I think this is where North Carolina gets caught with some defense, and I'm gonna rock with Houston to advance to the Final Four. I think Marcus Sasser and Jamal Sheed, best backcourt in the country. I mean, there's definitely a few that you could argue, and North Carolina is maybe one of them, but I think Houston has a better bench than North Carolina. I think Houston is better coached than North Carolina. I mean, I'm very high on Kelvin Sampson, and I'm going to take Houston here to win this one and advance here to the Final Four. So, now we got our final region to see who will lock up our Final Four spot. It's kind of a tongue twister there, but our last Final Four spot there, that's better. So we got Kansas versus FAU. So Kansas gets a pretty easy run here to the Elite Eight, but FAU, they're getting hot, right? They defeated Duke. They defeated Oral Roberts. Can they do it again? And can we get a 12 seed in the Elite Eight? And I just can't do it. I'm going to rock with Kansas here to win this one. Too much for FAU, but a really good run. We all appreciate them. Let's go FAU. Kansas moves on to the Elite Eight. Then we got Memphis versus Alabama here in this one. And this is a rematch. We saw this already in the regular season, right? And Memphis was on the road against Alabama, and it was a super close game. Kendrick Davis had an amazing game in that one. And even when he fouled out late in that one, Memphis almost made a late surge and came back and beat Alabama, and that was on the road. So now in a neutral site, I'm feeling, Kendrick Davis, he's getting hot. He is getting real hot. And he, we've seen really good guards go on runs in the March Madness tournament. And I'm kind of feeling a run here. And this is going to help Memphis with recruiting, help Penny Hardaway. They already got a big name head coach. I'm taking Memphis to advance here and defeat Alabama and make it to the Elite Eight here in this one. Kendrick Davis is having just one of those runs where he is really putting his team on his back and helping this Memphis team get super far into the tournament. Let's go. All right, so that sets up our final Elite Eight matchup for our last spot in the Final Four for March Madness 2023. And we got the Kansas Jayhawks, our reigning champions, who have had, some would call it maybe a cakewalk, but these are teams that have been getting hot, like St. Mary's. They're no easy task. You can't lose your focus against them or they will beat you. FAU, a team that was getting hot, a team that beat Duke. Kansas, don't disrespect their run because they are the defending champs. They will punch you right in the mouth. But then you have Memphis, led by Kendrick Davis, who has been on this outstanding run. And Kendrick Davis, I think he does it again here. It would be a super fun matchup to see Kendrick Davis. At this point, you got to say one of the best players in the country. I mean, he led Memphis to the Elite Eight. So heading into this game, you say Kendrick Davis, one of the best players in the country for sure. And going up against Kansas's top guard, Daquan Harris Jr., who is one of the best defensive guards in the country. It would be super fun to see who would win that battle. And I think the way Memphis can win this game is behind the back of not Kendrick Davis, but behind the back of DeAndre Williams, who I think could have a massive game against Kansas because Kansas doesn't really have, that great of a big man. And I think that is ultimately going to be their demise in this year's tournament. So give me Memphis to defeat them behind a big game by DeAndre Williams and maybe just some late crazy shots by Kendrick Davis, perhaps a buzzer beater, and Memphis takes the final spot in the Final Four. So let's take a look at our Final Four before we make our predictions. We got UCLA as a 2 seed coming out of our top left region. We got UConn as a 1 seed. We got Houston as a 2 seed, and we got Memphis as a 6 seed, making a super fun run to the Final Four. I really like the way that this has turned out. This would be a really good Final Four. So let's get into our first matchup. We got UCLA versus Houston, and honestly, these two teams, they match up pretty well up against each other. Like, I don't think that either team would pull away too far. I think that this would be an absolute classic. But if I have Houston making to the Final Four, I did this because I think Jarris Wallace kind of emerges, and he's already one of the best freshmen in the country, but I think he improves even more and more and more throughout the season. And I'm going to have Houston do it again and make it here to the national championship game. I think Houston, they just, with Jarris Wallace being that guy, Marcus Sasser, being a takeover guy, a two-way player, Jamal Sheed being a super good playmaker. I mean, Marcus Sasser is a good playmaker as well, but they also have some super good guys off the bench, and I think I trust this Houston team more, even though UCLA has looked super good as of late. Give me Houston here to make it to the national championship and defeat UCLA. I do think that Tiger Campbell versus Marcus Sasser would be a ton of fun, or I guess he would be guarded by Jamal Sheed, but either way, a really fun point guard matchup there, just a really good guard duo matchup. Give me the Cougars to move on, though. Then we got UConn versus Memphis, and I just realized we have 2 AAC teams in the Final Four. Who would have thought? I mean, that would be huge for their conference, but insane, but I definitely could see it being a possibility. Of course, I did predict it, but UConn versus Memphis in the next round, and honestly, I think this is where Memphis has to end their run here. I don't see them making the championship after making it to the Final Four, not against this UConn team who has a ton of depth. Kendrick Davis, I think would have a big game against UConn, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think DeAndre Williams would get a little bit locked up in this one, get beat up by Sanogo, get beat up by Donovan Clingan. I just think UConn is going to be too much in this one, and then you got to take into account for Andre Jackson, who I could see. I think Andre Jackson has a massive game in this one if this were to be a matchup, and he's setting himself up to be maybe Final Four most outstanding player after a big game against Memphis. So UConn advances to the Natty to face Houston. So here we are. We have, at this point in the season, this is my national championship prediction. We have on one side the 2-seeded Houston Cougars, who have been amazing all year long and really have a ton of potential to definitely be sitting here. And same with UConn, undefeated up to this point in the season, getting into Big East play, deepest team in the country, and this is going to be a tough one to pick, but I think I am actually going to have to rock with UConn to win the 2023 national championship at this point. I just think they're too good, too deep, and I think Andre Jackson is Final Four most outstanding player in this one. Maybe gets a triple-double or close to it in one of these Final Four games, but insane game. And I also think Jarris Wallace, who I praised all throughout this video, as good as I think he is, and as much as I think he's going to improve, Sanogo, Donovan Clingan, I mean, that's going to be tough to do there in the national championship game. I think that this would be a really close game, a great game throughout. I think the guard play, you got to lean the guard advantage probably to Houston, but UConn's guards are still good. I mean, Tristan Newton and them boys, and Joey Calcaterra. I mean, UConn's got some boys on their team, man, and this would be an amazing game. I really like how the way that this bracket turned out. Let me know your guys' final four picks at this point in the season down below in the comment section. And like I said before, we do an updated version of these bracket predictions about every few weeks or so, and then when we get closer to March, we will be doing a ton of brackets. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new, because not only do we do updated versions of these all the time, but we also do a ton of college basketball content almost daily. So make sure you guys subscribe, drop me a like if you guys enjoyed, and yeah guys, thank you so much for watching.